Hi, hello, and welcome. I am Ali Kazmi. I am Managing Director at Hansuke and co host of the Tax Files. Over to my co host, Ekta. Hello, Ekta.
Hi, Ali. Welcome again, lovely listeners, again to the Tax Files. My name is Ektaa Kumar. As you all know by now, I lead the global tax team for the Michael Page Executive Group. Ali, how are you? It's been a while.
It's been a fantastic start to the summer. Professionally great. I'm traveling across the globe and taking a note out of your book, so to speak, Ekta. Managed to get to New York, Boston, um, Kuwait, Copenhagen, all in a matter of 2, 3 weeks. So it's all go. But more importantly, on the personal side, that's where the fun is really, because we've got one of these great big Asian weddings going on, and by God, the sensitivity levels are really running high. Okay.
So how many events are we talking about, Ali? Are we on event 15 or 16 by now?
It's not the quantity. It's the fact that it's a destination wedding, but destination is in the UK, so we are playing host. So you can imagine we're having lots of fun. And importantly, my son's graduation is around the corner, so I'll be going to sunny Exeter.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah,
You must be proud parent to be sad
indeed,
graduation.
indeed. Tell me about yourself. How you been keeping?
Following suit in your kind of footsteps, Ali. Lots of travel. I'd love to say business related, but it's been much more pleasure during the summer. Where have I been? I've been in Mallorca for a little while. I've been in Italy. I spent a
Oh
bit of time
wow!
in Paris actually for work. So it's been a lot of traveling, but my life has been essentially taken over by a combination of Wimbledon and the Ashes recently.
Gosh, it's so tough. Can I
It's been
come
a
and work for you, Hector?
It's a hard life, Ali. It's a hard life. Somebody's got to do it. Have you been keeping up with the Wimbledon? Have you been kind of following the Ashes?
Well, Ashes, what a game! What a game! I thought we were out of it, but let's see.
Great. So, listeners, we're so excited to welcome you onto the ninth episode of the Tax Files. Today, we're joined by Patrick Reidy, Assistant Vice President for Fund Tax and Market Access at Capital Group. Patrick has been working in fund tax and market access for the past 8 years. Prior to joining Capital Group, he was a tax specialist in the Financial Services Asset Management Department of PwC in Dublin. He is a qualified chartered accountant and chartered tax advisor.
Excellent, excellent. It's great to be actually having Patrick join us today. We will talk a little bit about his career journey, how he got to where he is today, um, and we will try to get him to tell us about what he considers are the topical, important issues in the world of taxation. And importantly, we will then go to our final and most important round, which is the rapid fire round, and see how he fares in that.
It is with great pleasure that I finally introduce our guest, Mr. Patrick Reidy. Patrick, welcome. How's your week been?
Hi, Ekta. Hi, Ali. Firstly, can I just say thank you very much for the invite to the podcast. I must say I feel a bit humbled given that all of the participants you've had before me are people who have definitely stood out in their career in the tax space. So I hope I can live up to expectations, maybe add some value, but we'll see how things go. The other thing I would say is please do call me Patty. Patrick is only when my mother or my wife has something difficult they want to say to me. So
When you're
Patty
in
is definitely
trouble.
something I'm more comfortable with.
Works for us.
Absolutely. When we want to cause you some trauma, we will refer to you as Patrick as well. So, with that, Patty, it's great to have you. It'd really be of interest to find out because you're uh, from your accent, I detect from Ireland, and you managed to do somewhere along the way some tax qualifications, but you now reside in Switzerland. So we would like to ask you to go all the way back. Tell us which part of Ireland you are from, and how does a young man from Ireland get to Geneva?
Thanks, Ali. I think you've had an esteemed career as a tax professional, but maybe an alternative might have been detective, since you can detect the accent. So how did I come from Limerick City to Geneva in Switzerland? And to be honest, it's an interesting journey, and I think a lot of my foundations is based on my relationship with my family. We have a very close relationship in our small family of one brother, and I think that's how it all started. Really, I never really looked for tax, but tax somehow found me, is the way I would describe a role in tax.
I love that line.
I think, to be honest, my brother is 6 years older than me, and I always was competitive, and he is an extremely smart person, so I always tried to, how do I say, compete with him. So it all started
Emulate,
really
not compete, emulate.
emulate. It's a good word. So really, what happened was he studied law and accounting in university. So of course, I copied him completely without any sense of originality, and studied law and accounting. But by the time you reach a certain age, you realize you have to try and take a different path. So eventually he went the audit route, and I said, you know what, tax seems to be somewhere in the middle of law and accounting. So let's try that. And I was very lucky at the time that in the university I was, your third year is spent with a firm and actually doing some on-the-job learning. And I was lucky enough to fall into PwC Dublin with a great asset management tax team, with some great leaders who are still there today, who are still very much well known in the industry. You've got Marie Cody, Niall Flanagan, and others who have moved on, Timothy McManus, etc. So they're all people that have been my mentees all along, and now some of them peers. So that's how I ended up in tax, just simply because I didn't know what I was looking for, but it found me.
Absolutely. Tim's a great guy, by the way. We didn't prepare for this, but yeah, absolutely. And Pat Wall, also one from the
Patrick
past.
Wall was actually my first partner when I was with PwC Dublin, who's since retired.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going back to your early days, I believe there was some sort of like a family business, and perhaps you were being groomed for that, and you kind of walked away from that.
It's a good point. You've definitely looked at my LinkedIn page and tried to figure out what Dun Reidy engineering really is.
He's living up to his detective badge that you've given him. So.
He's certainly living up to it. That's right. You've done your research. So yeah, Dun Reidy engineering. It's an interesting one for me because when I was born, the same year, my father decided to start his own business, and we come from quite, I guess, some humble beginnings in the sense that my father never finished school. My mother never really finished school, but went on to become a mental health nurse. And my father just did an apprenticeship role. But then when he opened the business, it was a mechanical engineering and electrical engineering business, which really over time turned out to be a great success, where they had about 120 people hired in the company. I think that kind of shaped my childhood and also my values, in the sense of watching that company grow, but also the way it was growing and his approach to that business, which was very much one that cared for the people who worked for him. So in the sense of when things weren't great in the economy and the business wasn't there, he worked with other, even what you would call competitors, to find roles for those people temporarily until business picked up again. And that happened vice versa between competitors and his company. So there was a real, I guess, care for the employees and the people under his responsibility. And I think I've been lucky enough in my career now working with Capital Group to have found a company with similar values to what I grew up with, and the type of values that we try to live in our careers. So for me, that experience of having that family company and seeing it grow and seeing the hard work that goes into it, it kind of gave me the drive to actually give back, because my parents allowed my brother and I to be successful, or at least get to where we are. I wouldn't consider successful yet, but get to where we are today. And I think we owe it to them and owe it to everyone else around us to kind of give back as well.
Amazing. And I guess, growing up in a family environment, seeing it from the grassroots into kind of what it eventually ended up being, you mentioned there kind of giving you the skills and giving you the tools that you sort of use on a day-to-day basis now. If I were to ask you, for you, what was the main takeaway that you apply in your day-to-day life now from your time in a family business and in a family type environment in a completely different sector and kind of specialism to where you are now? What's the most transferable skill for you? What's been the thing that you've taken away that's kind of helped you day to day now?
It's actually a really tough question to narrow down into like one skill, especially when you work in the tax space, because there's different types of skill sets when it comes to working in tax, right? You have the tax technical side of things where it's obviously a necessity to undertake the day-to-day work. But then as you grow in your tax role, you become more of a generalist, and then you have some more people style skills that you either need to work on, you have naturally, or are kind of somehow something you gather as you go through your career. For me, a huge one is empathy, really. And especially in the current times that we are, and empathy, the reason I use that word is because we are going through a period of transition, not just in the tax profession, but in lots of different areas. And because of that, there can be times when the role itself is evolving, the speed of change is quite unheard of, and that can be uncomfortable. And so empathy is very much an important thing to have, because you can then put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to experience what they're feeling and help them through this period of change. And I think we'll all come out the better for it at the other side of this technology transformation and speed of change that we're going through.
There is a great quote from To Kill a Mockingbird. It happens to be a lawyer, Atticus character, which is just about that ability to have empathy, and which is a great skill. I mean, sort of like to have, irrespective of not just your work environment, just being a well-adjusted human being. You talked a little bit about your past. You talked, obviously, the family dimension clearly comes through, and you talked about some of the tax luminaries. I would sort of like say some really outstanding professionals. Who would you say, Paddy, is being possibly the person with the greatest impact on your life, or who's inspired you the most?
Ali, between Ekta and yourself, you're really coming out with the difficult questions. It's again, I would say it's difficult to answer that in terms of just one person, because many different people have had a huge impact on my life in different ways. I think certainly if I take a step back and think about my development, who I am as a person, I would have to say my mother. And that's not something she told me to say knowing I was coming in the podcast, by the way. And I'll give a short background story to that. As I said, she actually studied to become a mental health nurse when she was younger, and actually stopped that career to become a full-time mother when my brother was born, and continued in that sense throughout our livelihood. And I think that's a very difficult role. That is a really, really hard role. I considered my dad to be the CEO of the business he created, and my mother was the CFO of everything, the business and the family and everything like that. So honestly, she was an amazing inspiration for us all. And about 8 years ago, when I actually moved to Geneva, my father was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, and passed away last year. And he was quite young. He was 64 when he passed away. And throughout that period, my mother spent 8 years by his side here looking after him. He never needed to go to a nursing home or a facility to help with that. It was very much something we took on board as a family, thanks to my mother's dedication and luckily some background in mental health. So for me, she is the biggest inspiration to show that life is not about being selfish, but rather selfless, and the impact you have on others is really important.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, one of the things I'm just working professionally with you, I mean, I notice is just how much of an emphasis you put on teamwork, not just direct team, but wider people, the key stakeholders. I mean, how important is that? I see it, but I would like to understand your philosophy um, behind that.
Well, I think if I speak specifically about working in the tax space, and obviously I work for Capital Group, but the opinions I share here are my own and not really the opinions as such of Capital Group. However, I'm lucky to work with a company who has the very same values as what I aspire to, but also that I get motivated from. I think it's really important to understand, especially in the tax world where we work in the asset management space, that it's impossible to be an SME of everything. And so teamwork and collaboration is the only way you can be successful and tackle all of the issues and work that you have. And it's important to have the value for all of the diverse perspectives and backgrounds that different people bring to a team. So I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by an excellent team, direct team, as you mentioned, first of all, with skill sets that come from tax, that come from fund accounting, that come from real estate, come from landlords. So everyone has a different perspective that they've brought to the team. And because of that, we hope we come to good conclusions. But it's really important that we value each other's skill sets and work together as a team, because nobody realistically can do it all. I think that's one important point to know, that it's not on you as a person to have to do it all. You have to trust those around you and trust that they will bring their best as long as you're bringing your best as well. That's the directing for me. And then obviously trusting your service providers, your stakeholders, because we all really are working together towards the same goal. So it's about building those relationships, those partnerships, and having that loyalty and building that trust over time to work together. We're all working towards the same goal, especially in the tax profession, which honestly requires all of us to keep the standards high, to act with integrity, with humility. These are things that we need to do all together, not one person is responsible on their own.
And bearing all of that in mind, Paddy, kind of applying that day-to-day methodology in your day-to-day life with your own team and your own, environment that you've sort of created and built, how do you implement that methodology? How do you implement those principles into day-to-day management and optimization, I guess, of your team?
Thanks, Ektaa. Well, first of all, I will say that the team was actually built by my boss, and she was a fantastic mentor to myself, and also a huge player in building that team. And she is still here to help us through these different things. I'm going to answer in a bit of a strange way, right? Because I try to listen to lots of podcasts, read some books, listen to music, etc. And I'll start with music. I remember one time Spotify was probably sick of me being too Irish and listening to U2 consistently. So it recommended an Australian band called Shepherd. And I started listening to their songs. And one that stood out to me is one called Learning to Fly. And the lyrics within it are something along the lines of, and I'm still learning to fly. And I think that's something that I'll start with, which is I'm constantly learning and I never will stop learning. I am not, how do I say, the perfect people leader as well as tax specialist, but I know what I'm not and I know what I am, and I try to work towards being a better person every day. So I think that when the team sees that and trusts you to know that you have things that you need to work on, that you trust them, that's already a good start, because they can see that you're genuine in your empathy towards them and your desire to get better for them. Then another one is a podcast, which is a TED Talks between a guy called Emmanuel Acho and Adam Grant. Emmanuel Acho was a former NFL player, and he's written a series of books. One of them is called Illogical, saying yes to a life without limits. And one of the things he talks about in that book is the difference between someone who wants to be significant and somebody who wants to be successful. And I know lots of people have spoken on that subject, but the way he described it for me stood out in the sense that if you want to be successful, it's very much about the I. It's a personal journey. It's normally monetary, and it's normally a success that is for you and not for anybody else. And I think in my younger days, and a lot of people in their younger days focus on success. And as time goes on, you realize that success can be short-lived and it's not very long-lasting. And it's better to be significant, because significant is about bringing those around you on and helping those around you be a better version and the best version of themselves. And I think being significant is long-lasting. It's probably lasting beyond your even lifetime, but also will lead to success anyway, hopefully. So that was another one that stands out. So if you lead with your values of being significant rather than successful, again, people believe it, especially if you're genuine with yourself and with them. And so that will help get the best out of people, because you're all kind of rowing the boat in the same direction. And if I use the dragon boat as an example, there's no point in one person dragon boat being really strong and pulling really hard if the other 10 are not, or 11, sorry, that's an odd number, are actually not pulling in time with each other. So it's just those kind of values and these kind of things. You listen to songs, podcasts, read books. They're just things I pick out and try to apply.
For our listeners that obviously can't see us at the moment, there was a lot of aggressive nodding going on from me and Ali during Paddy's sort of summary of that. But no, you're absolutely right. I think, I guess it's about kind of building a team around you that can, fit in all the parts together and create one whole, rather than sort of acting as independent entities and rowing your own boat, as it would be. I'm going to ask you a tough question, Paddy. If you were to summarize your leadership style and your kind of what you're creating in one word, just one word, what would you want your long-lasting legacy post this to be? What would the one word be?
Tough one.
Can I have one sentence, not one word?
Yeah, we can allow that. I think
so.
We can let that go.
It's cheating, but in your case, we'll allow.
Yeah,
so I'm going to steal Patrick Philippe's tagline, right? It's, you never really own a Patrick Philippe, you mind it for the next generation.
Amazing. I think you took both of our breaths away with that one. So, absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think what a way to summarize what you're trying to build for kind of future to come. Absolutely. So,
by the way, I don't own a Patrick Philippe. Just to be clear.
Patrick Philippe, if you're listening, I've got the perfect sponsor lined up for you.
I've just seen the tagline passing through Geneva Airport quite often, so it's not that I have one. It's just I've seen the tagline.
Yeah, if the PR team for Patrick Philippe are listening, if you would like a few roadies to test out the product, please talk to me.
Tax Files is open for that kind of sponsorship.
Yes.
The co-host will very happily.
So I guess leading on into this sort of new idea of kind of creating something for the generation ahead, and creating a mission statement to kind of go down, looking at the tax landscape at the moment now, how fast things are evolving, the introduction of new regimes and new dialogue on an almost constant basis. What do you see is important to keep up with some of the changes when it comes to tax legislation and policy? How do you keep up with that sort of side of things?
It's a good question. It is something that you need to be agile and flexible and constantly evolve. I'm using a lot of taglines, but it's true. In reality, it all comes down to prioritization, and what you put on your list as priority today might easily change by something else tomorrow. But it's about managing that prioritization. I think as well, and that the industry is, over the last few years, becoming more comfortable with using the technology that's available to us and less scared of using that technology. And that allows you to kind of create efficiencies where you move from a function which is quite heavily focused on compliance to being able to actually reduce the time it takes to be compliant and then focus on strategic advisory and kind of scanning the horizons for the regulations to come and putting things in place proactively rather than reactively, because technology has allowed us to create efficiencies in other parts of the process. In saying that, technology is moving quite fast as well. You have things like ChatGPT, which I think has potentially a lot of benefits, but I think we need to, as a tax profession, to be very careful that we don't lose our understanding of the regulations and things, because it's easy to get it and summarize from ChatGPT, but it's not always correct. And I think that's actually goes back to automation. In our team here, we have a spirit whereby we will be the citizen developers of the automation because we want to understand the process flow. So if something goes wrong in the automation, we will know what has happened and how to fix it, because you don't want to lose sight of what are the tax rules that I'm automating. You don't want to just see the end result. You want to know how you got there. So it's very much something around saying, use the technology to the best of your advantage. Don't forget what your role is. And 3, don't be afraid of the volume and just prioritize. It's okay that not everything is not done the next day.
That's really good. Thank you very much for that discussion, Paddy. And I think we are at that point that you've been waiting for, where we move swiftly to our rapid fire round. Are you ready, Paddy?
I think you mean it was the point that you were aiming for, but yes, I'm ready.
I was going to say, I think this is more excitement for us and more dread for poor Paddy at the moment. Well, without further ado, then, Paddy, are you ready? Do you want to take a minute? Do you want to take a sip of water? Or are you ready to go?
I've just had a nice glass of water there, so I think the temperature is down slightly in the room. I'm ready.
Good. Right. In 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Paddy, are you a cat person or a dog person?
Dog.
Are you a Paris Hilton or Kim Kardashian fan?
Are you sure?
Paddy, Bon Jovi or Bon Iver?
Bon Jovi, because I don't know who Bon Iver is.
Oh, there you go.
Wow.
That was nice and easy then.
Spotify guy doesn't know.
Paddy, what's your biggest pet peeve?
Tardiness.
Okay. 3 items on your bucket list.
Travel New Zealand, learning to cook Thai food properly, and trying to manage fitness levels.
Bad haircut or bad dye job?
Bad dye job. I've had one plenty of times in my youth.
Too hot or too cold?
Too cold.
What's your biggest fear?
Snakes.
Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Tom Holland, your favorite actors. Rank them in order.
Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Tom Holland.
If you could tell your past self one thing, what would it be?
Don't sweat the small stuff.
One word to summarize your personality.
Optimistic.
Favorite book.
Thomas L. Friedman, Thank You for Being Late, An Optimist's Guide to Thriving in an Age of Accelerations.
Oh.
Wow.
If listeners want to save for your Amazon shop list, I think that one. Favorite movie.
Annie James Bond.
And lastly, Sean Connery or Daniel Craig?
Sean Connery. Classic.
There you go. Well done, Paddy. You survived it.
Fantastic,
I
Paddy.
have to thank the background research staff for throwing some difficult questions in there and trying to get a gather on my age.
Always in an artful ways.
Age is just a shoe size, you know.
Exactly.
But no, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think you've had some excellent guests on before, and I definitely did not want to copy Malcolm Richardson because he has far more experience than I do. So I tried to take the asset management space in a slightly different direction.
No, fantastic. Listen, it's been a fantastic podcast. We really enjoyed it. We really got a sense about your values that really came through, and that shows itself in what you talked about. You know, your teamwork aspect, some of the challenges that you see within the tax function, running that, what's important from a teamwork perspective as well. And you survived the rapid fire round. Um, Paddy, I mean, sort of like before we say goodbye to you, I mean, what we wanted to find out is what information or advice would you leave, for our audience?
It's a good question. I think the main thing that I would say is, as tax professionals, I think it's not just our calling, but our duty to help the next generation of tax professionals and build that pipeline in such a way that they hold the same values as are expected from the profession, but also to help encourage them into the profession, which is not something which is so evident given the technology changes, the environment, the desire to do different things. So I think we have, as tax professionals, we do have a duty to help the next tax professionals come through, like the tagline of particularly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the challenges that you have is the crisis of trust, if I can say it, within the profession, where people are doubting us, they're questioning us, and let's be open about it. We haven't covered ourselves in glory either. To have someone like you with such a strong value set, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali, and thank you very much, Ekta, for having me today. I certainly feel humbled by being invited and also following the guests you've had, but it's been a great experience, and I hope that we had some fun while we did it. So that was always.
Absolutely. I'm sure your mum will be very pleased. Make sure she listens, becomes a subscriber to the Tax Files.
This link is not being sent to my mother, but anyway.
I think she should be the next guest. Shout out to Mrs. Reidy. No, thank you, Patty, for joining us, and it's been such a great discussion. I'm sure all of our listeners are going to absolutely love it. Finally, thank you for listening to the Tax Files. It has been a pleasure as always. Please subscribe and get in contact if you wish to discuss any of these topics with us and our team, or if you have any questions. To stay up to date with announcements, updates, and guest reveals, please follow Hansuki on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Thank you so much to my co-host, and of course to our wonderful guest, Paddy. Really appreciate it, and importantly, our audience. So thank you very much for your support and encouragement. We hope to see you again next time. Thanks a lot.